All right, we're going to talk about ASME P-Numbers. This is the American Society of Mechanical Engineers base metal classification system. So ASME Section 9 assigns P-numbers to base materials. So they group these things with similar welding characteristics. They aren't all the same, but they have similar welding characteristics and similar material properties. And why we do this is because it reduces the number of procedures. If you had to qualify every metal to weld it to every other metal, it would just be an astronomical number of weld procedures that you would need, and it would just get out of hand. So, for the most part, materials with the same P number are going to be able to be used within a WPS once you qualify it. So, if you qualify P1, you get all the P1 materials. If you qualify a P8 to a P8, you get all the P8s. And I'm sure there's some kind of exception somewhere that this doesn't work. But for the most part, we're playing the numbers. So our example here is, so instead of having to qualify every separate WPS for every carbon steel grade, they just dump them into a bunch of similar steels into separate P numbers. You qualify one, you get others. So this is to reduce the amount of testing that you need for both people and procedures. So here's our major material categories. So we've got our material family: steels, ferrous materials, P1 through P15F. This is pretty much everything that's made out of iron. It's got to have at least 51% iron. So this is where we put this stuff. There's no P2, and from what I gather, that's because it used to be wrought iron, and that's the stuff we make gates out of, and we decided we don't want to be making pressure vessels out of it. So there's no P2. Aluminum alloys 21 through 26, copper alloys 31 through 35, nickel alloys 41 through 49, and titanium alloys 51 through 53. So here would be an example of using P numbers. So let's say I'm going to qualify carbon steel P number 1 SA53 to P number 1 SA36. So this is general run-of-the-mill carbon steel materials. And let's say I'm using E78-1, which is an F4A1. We're not going to talk about that, but just to keep everything consistent, we're going to use shielded metal arc. So we weld these two together. Well, we can then weld any of the P number 1 materials listed on table QWQB 422 to any other P1 material listed. But we got to use this shielded metal arc welding with a F4A1 filler material. But we won't worry about that too much now. But using that welding process, we can use any P1 base material and weld it to any other P1 base material. So this is what we get. This is, if you go through that table, this is some of the materials that are listed as P1s. We've got forgings, resistance welded pipe, seamless pipe, firmness welded pipe, castings, flange fittings, welded pipe, plate, whatever. So right? So we can weld forgings to plate. Any of these material specification numbers fall under P1 material. And like I said, we have to use this filler metal and uh, chemistry, set of numbers here with the E7018-1. We don't just have to use E78-1. We can use other stuff, but it has to be an F4, F1, or A1 material. Let's try one that's just a little more complicated. How about we use a P1 carbon steel to an austenitic stainless steel? So we're going a P1 to a P8. And let's use an F5A number 8 filler material. We're going to stick weld this because, well, Gary stick welds better than he does other stuff. So then what do we get? We can weld any P1 material listed on table QWQB 422 to any other P8 material listed. So this is what we get. We can weld anything on that right side to anything on the left side. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. We got forging, sheet, strip, seamless tubing over here on the stainless side, welded tube, bar, welded pipe, seamless welded pipe, and castings. And then we got on the left-hand carbon steel side, furnace welded pipe, pipe flange welded pipe, castings, plate, forgings, any of that good stuff. We can weld any of the stuff on the left-hand side to any of the stuff on the right side, as long as we use an F number 5, A number 8 filler material, shielded metal arc. All right, so here's some specialty alloy numbers that you might run across, and I just threw these in there almost for trivial purposes. But, the P number 10H, that's duplex and super duplex stainless steel. Down here in Houston, you'll see that a lot in oil and gas. It's kind of some difficult stuff to weld, a little tricky, but it can be done. And P15E. This is 9 chrome, 1 moly vanadium. It's a grade 91 type material. It's a creep resistant enhanced ferritic. This is kind of a specialty thing. They use it on power plant piping, like steam lines. So instead of having let's say a 4-inch wall piece of steam line, you weld it with this stuff and you might get a inch and a half or whatever. You save a lot of material, but it is some cranky, miserable stuff to weld because you got to really preheat it to like 400 and some or 500 degrees, and then you got to let it cool down when you're welding, and then you got to heat it up again for some kind of hydrogen bake out. Then you send it to the oven where they heat it up to, like, I want to say 1400 degrees or some god awful number to stress relieve it, and then you're good to go. Everything's happy, right? So anyways, these are some advanced alloys, but here's their P numbers associated with them. So what do we learn today? Key takeaways. P numbers. We're going to group similar base materials together, and we do this for the ASME, the American Society of Mechanical Engineering welding codes and construction codes. It's to reduce the number of WPS qualifications. They figure if you can weld one P1 material to another with a certain process, you can do them all. These are based on composition, weldability, and mechanical properties, so that you can weld them together. Just because it says you can weld them together doesn't mean you should weld them together. You can, but there might be instances of there's weird chemistry or something where it might not be such a good idea. So do your homework. Probably the most two common carbon or materials, P numbers you're going to run across, probably carbon steel and stainless steel. That's probably going to be the big ones you run across. And when you're welding materials, always verify the classifications with that table.